Welcome. Another Hump Days Marketing Spotlight. We got in the room here, Devon T. Smith. He's got that cool middle initial thing going on. How you doing today?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself, kid?
Good to see you. Again, Marketing Spotlight, Devon T. Smith. He's with VCCP New York. He's a digital marketing strategist, multimedia producer, and speaker. He's built a successful track record of digital content and communication strategy for brands ranging across various industries, such as T-Mobile for business, Shell, Magento, eBay Enterprise, and more. He's a respected voice at the intersection of culture and marketing. Devon is published on platforms such as Adweek, Black Enterprise, Revolt TV, and Tidal, and we're glad to have him here with us today. So, Devon, tell us a little bit about you're going to be speaking with us next week at the Digital Summit at Home for Small and Medium Businesses. So we'll get into that a little bit. But first, tell us a little bit about your role and what you're up to at VCCP New York.
Right. Yeah, so I'm a senior content strategist over at VCCP New York. We're a small boutique agency that is part of a larger global network. So my role over there, I basically lead content strategy from top line web experiences, own digital channels, all the way down to organic and paid social. So just making sure that we, solidify, messaging strategy that's on point, and making sure that permeates through the way that we create content, whether on a macro level or a micro level, and make sure that we create engagement and brand awareness across digital touch points for our clients.
And if you're allowed to say, what are some of the clients you're working on right now? Any fun work that you want to brag about?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, you froze there for a second.
One of the most exciting things that I've gotten to work on lately. I've got to lead strategy for the development and launch of their new editorial platform, which is called Magenta Edge. So it is basically insights, best practices, and storytelling centered on small business owners. And it's been, probably one of the most rewarding projects I've ever worked on. So that's really got my engine going right now.
Curious, does that become a little bit more of a focus for Magento? A small business?
Well, T-Mobile for Business in general has a focus on small business owners.
T-Mobile, sorry.
Yeah, no problem. So, it was really imperative to figure out a way to give them a brand voice that made them a thought leader face. So, we've seen tremendous success, great engagement online, digital workshops, all that good stuff. So, looking to grow the platform some more, and it looks like it's got a bright future ahead of it. It's a 3-year project that T-Mobile was working on, so this is just year 1. So we're excited to be a part of that and help launch that, bring that into fruition. Everyone's been giving us great feedback so far, so it's been great.
That's great. That's exciting. That's an exciting project. So congrats on that. So your session next week is on the Content Strategy Playbook, 4 principles for content marketing success. What can we expect to hear on that topic next week?
Right. So this playbook is something that I stick to. I like to dedicate my efforts through it. So what the audience can expect to learn is number one, thinking macro and delivering micro. Right. Audiences are more diverse than ever now, and they will continue to be. So looking at ways to address a wider audience while also engaging with and informing more micro audiences that live within those macro audiences. Then there's understanding metrics that matter, right? I'm a firm believer that there are only a few true measures of content marketing success these days, because everything is a result of payola now. If you got a budget, you can buy views, you can buy followers, you can buy reach and impressions, but you can't buy ordinary conversation from everyday people. You can't buy time spent. You can't make people spend time with your content and with your brand, and you can't buy your way to being shared through word of mouth. So we're going to be talking about how to make sure that you create content through those lenses. Then there's also strategizing from the top down. I find a lot of times that a lot of brands tend to think from the bottom up. They want to do a social media strategy, but their messaging and communication strategy isn't together. So if you're not leveraging the right data to inform how you speak as a brand and who you're speaking to, how and why, that can't trickle down through the correct channels, and then you end up with disjointed content marketing efforts. And then lastly is production, always tackling the elephant in the room. Being creative, thinking of ways to create content is always fun, but what we end up doing is always kind of thinking in the best case scenario. It's important to think about things like budgets and who your partners are and how much time you have to create content. These things all combine to make sure that your planning and your strategy for developing and producing and distributing content is more realistic than idealistic. So we're going to be going through some different tips that people can use to make sure
that's fantastic. Thanks for giving us a preview of that. And I have to ask, what's your opinion on when you say, looking at some of the metrics and really trying to increase engagement and getting your audience engaged? From your standpoint, what are those metrics that you really focus on? We always hear about what I call vanity metrics, like likes and stuff. And hey, hitting a like button is nothing, right? We want. I'm not gonna give away the secret sauce because I don't want to lead the witness here. But you tell me, what are some of those like easy tips that people could do to get better engagement? What are those metrics you look at from that standpoint?
Yeah. So one of the key ones for me is always comments and direct replies. Conversation lets you know exactly how people feel and what the reputation is around your product, your service, or your brand. I look at time spent, whether it's on page views, whether it's the amount of time spent watching a video, and I look at the amount of shares. Those three metrics to me are indicators of brand affinity, right? You literally cannot pay for them. So if people are talking to your brand or about your brand, if people are spending quality time with your brand, and people are trusting your brand enough to share it with their loved ones, that's how you know that a piece of content is successful.
Sharing content with loved ones. I'm quoting you on
that. You got it. It's free.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And you had a recent article that you penned that's up on our site. If anybody wants to go check it out, go to digitalsummit.com over in the resources section. It's at small business digital marketing, 3 metrics that matter most. Without having you to go back and reread what you wrote, do you remember what the 3 metrics that matter most and why are those important?
Totally. So those are the ones that I just ran through: comments, shares, and time spent. And I'll reiterate that, whether you're doing paid or organic content distribution, you can literally measure the truthful success of what you're doing by knowing the way that people are not just measuring the amount of comments. That's a great indicator, but what are people actually saying? Are they actually having conversation? Are they just leaving emojis? Like, this is how you really know if you're driving, any type of dialogue. What good is 1 million views on a video if people are only spending an average duration of 30 seconds? That means content's not good, right? What good is the message that you're trying to put out? And is it really resonating if no one's seeing it and immediately thinking, oh, I want to share this with my community? These are things that you have to think about to know that your content is actually impactful.
I love it. I was watching an old Office episode with my son last night where Andy was getting upset because I don't know if you're a fan of The Office, but
everybody's a fan of The Office.
Yeah. It's where they started showing a preview of the documentary was coming out. It was like towards one of the last seasons, and Andy was mad because there was an online troll who was like picking on him. So you gotta watch out for those. Like, just like all the engagement metrics too, you gotta have a plan for, depending on your brand and stuff, really engaging with her, or how to deal with those trolls and the haters that are out there too, right?
100%. You gotta get granular. I'm a person who, data is only going to tell you so much. You have to take the extra step of combing through that data to actually see what's happening in the grassroots and ground level. I like to say you don't let data dictate your decision making. You let it guide. It just tells you where to look. And
I love it. Yeah.
Microsoft.
Yeah. I worked for a big brand back in the day, and when we first started putting product reviews on the site, brand managers were really nervous, and I always tell this as a case study. And they would say, well, what can we do about negative reviews? And I said, improve your product.
That's it.
Right? I mean, when you fill out a comment card in a restaurant, they don't just throw out the bad comments.
Right.
They improve on the service, right?
Right. And the negative comments are, you know, I look at negative feedback as a good thing too. You know, if people are literally telling you what they're not liking or what to change, I mean, what better research is there for you to leverage? You know what I mean? Yeah. It's almost more powerful than people telling you they love it. That's not helping much. That's just telling you to keep going. So
Jay Bear wrote a whole book on that. Hug your haters. So
I like that.
Good. That's a good topic. We could go on that one. Now, but anyways, I know you're a fan of really kind of talking about you're big on the future of contextual marketing, and it was something we touched on prior to this. So I want to make sure we bring that up and talk about how do you see contextual marketing transitioning to mean more about targeting people in the in the right time at the right place, and what can we expect, or what are you seeing as a change with that?
Right. So, I mean, you know, up until now, contextual marketing, contextual advertising is all about like making sure people see your content or your brand where and when it's most effective. Right. But things are kind of things are in a major way growing past that. You know, sure, you can track where a demographic is the most, whether it's a certain social platform or certain websites, and you can track how long they're there and what key dates or something like that, right? But as the consumer market is becoming more diverse, you got to look at millennial and Gen Z makes up majority. It's like 60% of the consumer market, right? And of millennials and Gen Z, I think 40% are ethnically and racially diverse, right? And that also permeates through their political decisions. It permeates through lifestyle, right? So we're gonna have to consider more about what's being said and how, as opposed to where and when it's showing up, right? Because we're all getting fed ads, we're all getting fed content all the time. So knowing where to find me really doesn't matter so much anymore. But knowing what I need to hear,
you froze there right about where you said knowing what I need to hear.
Yeah,
yep, you're back.
I was saying that it's knowing where to find me and when is maybe 15% of the battle at this point, because there's a million brands doing that. But if you can really hone in on what I need to hear, why I want to hear it, and how I want to hear it and see it, that is what's going to make me stop and at least think about engaging, and then, you know, whatever other action you want after that.
Yeah, and so I'm a big fan of developing personas. So what you're talking about, I guess, is really developing out those personas that aren't so much about demographics, but really attitudinally, and really touching on some of those subjects that for the longest time no one wanted to really think about when it came to branding, which is, you know, political and cultural, socially relevant topics, right?
Yeah, they matter. And you know, thinking about, you know, that word relevancy, you know what I mean, is a touchy topic too, right? Because I like to go away from thinking of personas, and really I think about subcultures, right? It gets so deep now that everyone has these core values that get granular as you get into those micro communities within those different subcultures. And if you look at I think one of the best case studies out there is Red Bull. If you look at their content marketing, they're about extreme sports, right? But within that, you have skateboarders, you have surfers, you have extreme cyclists, things like that, right? Who they all are married together by their, you know, core lifestyle elements, because they are extreme athletes or extreme sports enthusiasts, but they have distinct lifestyle values and attributes, right? Now, that's just, so, you know, there might be different between skateboarders and surfers, but what about Black skateboarders versus white skateboarders and Latinx skateboarders? What about the LGBTQ community? I mean, it could go on and on. So you really have to know that value sets are going to continue to keep getting more granular as we keep getting more diverse. And there are more cultures that we might not even be aware of that are brought. Really be considerate about the way you speak to people and how you choose to give them a platform through your brand.
So let's build off of that then. I'm a brand, and there's potential conversation or topic that I feel like fits with my brand, and I want to get into that. Is it a matter of research to finding out? I mean, is it Reddit forums? Is it following hashtags? Is it an influencer? Like, how does a brand not be fake? Inject themselves in that or participate in that conversation. Let's take the word inject out because that sounds negative. How do you participate in that conversation in a constructually positive way without coming across disingenuous?
Right. So I think there's a couple layers to it, right? So of course you start with data, right? That's what gives you your North Star, right? And I can even use the T-Mobile project, for example, right? We're talking to small business owners at large, but speaking black small business owners as a focus area, right? So we need to know what are the industries that these small business owners frequent, right? Who are what does the majority versus the minority look like, right? Or is it mostly women who run small businesses, right, versus men? How many employees do they typically have, right? And what are the pain points? What are the challenges? What are the points of victory that are synonymous with the macro group, but maybe distinct within the micro group, right? Nowadays, it's really important to partner, right? We've all heard of influencer partners and media partners, right? But that can happen on various levels. It doesn't have to be Inc. magazine. It could be your local newspaper if you want to, right? You have to partner with people who are you as a brand are not part of the community, right? Statistics always say that people trust people that they know and love, and that they're friends over brands. So you have to look at people who are either trusted within the community of your audience, and it doesn't have to be a huge influencer. It could be someone who is local, right? And it goes up from there. And you have to have those conversations to say, this is what we're trying to say. This is how we want to show up. First of all, we want to make sure that you are comfortable working with us and you think that we're true to what we're saying, right? And how do we communicate our product and service or our stance as a brand? How do you take that and communicate it through your own words? People want to hear from you. They're not looking to hear from you. And what you do is you borrow cultural equity from that, right? And there needs to be some sort of fair trade. I don't know how you work that out. Could be money, could be opportunity. Depends on the scenario, right? And through that, you're able to show up organically. Brands now more than ever need representatives, unless you're a legacy brand like Nike, right? And even they have to get with the right athletes. And that's a sustained effort over time. You have to constantly show up, especially in a socioeconomic era right now where all these different distinct communities, regardless of who you're speaking to, are all having certain experiences, good or bad, right? You have to show up all the time, right? And be there to collaborate, to be a platform, to assist, and you have to build that reputation organically. It's not a campaign that puts you in that space where you become an active participant. You have to actually have a lifestyle as a brand that shows that you have a authentic and a space within that place.
I agree with that, and I think that's where I was maybe going with the question about not wanting to come across as disingenuous. So, does a brand need to invest first internally and say we've got to change culturally and how we think about whatever conversation we're trying to be a part of? Then that influences the creative or the content, and then we can bring in those partners or influencers or spokespeople. But you gotta kind of go in, then go out, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's important to always, have representation, right?
I'm gonna stop you there. Hang on. You broke up on representation.
Okay. What's going on with my internet? I'm so sorry.
That's all right. There we go. Keep going.
It doesn't always necessarily have to do with race or ethnicity, even though those are things that, diversity and inclusion is important, right? You should have, if you're speaking to a certain culture, you should have representatives of that culture on the inside that are, they don't need to necessarily do a bunch of studies and stuff like that to know how to talk to this audience. They are the audience, right?
Yeah.
And that always shines through in the vernacular that's used. Understanding certain timing and an appropriate place to show up. That stuff is all an extension of those people, right? Because it's natural to them. And that's when it starts to show up authentically through through the different content that you put out. And I would also say, talk to the community, right? I mean, we've all seen brands do surveys and things like that to kind of gather some insights. Social media gives you the space to do that as much as you want. You literally can just ask questions and crowdsource. And that's what I mean by letting data guide you versus dictate you, right?
For sure. That's the heart of marketing.
You know, like data might tell you what questions to ask or what subjects matter, right? But people are going to tell you the nuanced information that data can't capture, because data is not people. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. So now you're on the ad agency side. Right. You kind of move your career a little bit. Mm-hmm. What drew you to the position you're in now and kind of getting that? And what do you hope to achieve? What's next?
Right. Well, it was always the plan, right? So I started off in a more pop cultural space, working in music and entertainment, simply because that's what I love. I grew up on hip hop, and I think it informs pop culture at large. And I wanted to learn how to produce content and how to, cover live events and things like that in a really fast-paced environment. Now, and that's where the storytelling came into play, being able to write and produce in a way that told authentic stories. Now, to what I wanted to make sure to do was understand the more technical aspect of things, right? How does marketing communications happen above the line and below the line, not just socially, but across your digital display, across your television ads, print and digital, right? Even though they say print's dying, because I wanted to have this holistic perspective on not just what's going on in the world and within culture, but how to mobilize it and how the mechanics work behind us seeing what we see, how we see it. And the next step for me, I dream of, I think right now, like we talked about contextual marketing a little bit ago. I really do think that that's an area of focus. We all receive so much information, most of which content is being pumped out at such a crazy rate at this point that there's no way that all the information necessary for effective reporting and sharing is being done at the rate at which stories just get updated. But once people see it, they see it. And what happens is audiences develop their behaviors based off of lack of context, right? And what happens? Brands do consumer behavioral study to come up with their campaigns and their marketing efforts. So what happens if the studies that you're doing are based off of behavior that's not actually authentic? It's based off of lack of context. So since I'm in a space where, I have a journalistic background and a producing background, and I have a marketing background, I dream of one day having my own platform that does contextual cultural reporting, and off the back of that generates true marketing insights that can develop more healthy brand communication and effective brand communication.
I love it. And you are, I think, probably the 5th or 6th guest I've had on here with a journalism background. I got a journalism background. So all you kids out there, don't be afraid to study journalism. Journalism Rocks will teach you good skills on how to be a storyteller and how to get to the heart of a story. So
100%. I
love it. Devon, this was fantastic. We usually keep this around 25, 30 minutes. So we're there. Any parting words before we roll?
Oh, man. First of all, thanks for the platform. I really appreciate the opportunity. And secondly, if you haven't yet, register for Digital Summit at Home. Next week, I'll be presenting the 4 principles of content marketing. And you can catch me online at Dev T. Smith on Twitter as well as Instagram if you want to follow any of my work. And I'm looking forward to presenting next week.
That was perfect. You think I wrote that and sent that to you? I did not. That was off the cuff, genuine from the man himself. All right, Devon, we're going to go ahead and close it out. Stick around and we'll chat for a little bit more. Thanks everybody for joining.